Generation 4's Battle Frontier is cursed in the strangest way possible. Despite Game Freak going out of their way to prevent uncatchable shinies from appearing, almost every facility has some unintended way to generate shiny Pokemon. What's interesting is the ways these shinies vary. For some facilities, it's just a standard full odds chance for your opponent to have a shiny Pokemon. For others, it gets weird, like shiny odds catapulting to 1 in 200,000, the highest in the series, or having your non-shiny Pokemon magically transform into a shiny. As a result, this unsuspecting post-game area accidentally features some of the most bizarre shiny hunts you can attempt in the series. These happy little accidents are decently known online, but not well documented. So let's fix that. In this video, I'll break down these extremely cursed shiny hunts, as well as the various development mistakes that led to these accidental shinies. But before that, I want to give a quick thanks to today's sponsor, AVerMedia. Have you ever traveled to an event, wanted to bring your Switch, then realized that the dock would take up too much space? Or even worse, you wanted to travel and stream, then realized there's no way you could fit a console, dock, and capture card all in your suitcase? Well, don't worry, AVerMedia's got you covered. Their Core Go and Elite Go are the perfect companions for your traveling adventures. The Core Go is a pocket-sized replacement for all your bulky docks, and it's travel-friendly with different plugs for international adventures. It features 4K 60 HDMI output, making it perfect for docking not just your Switch or Switch 2, but your Steam Deck, ROG Ally, tablets, smartphones, and more. It can even charge up to 3 devices at once, and you can use the USB-A port to connect accessories like keyboards and mice. The Elite Go has all the same features as the Core Go, but it also boasts 1080p 60fps capture. Yes, this tiny device is a dock and capture card built into one. You can stream directly to your laptop, PC, or even iPad using an app like Camo Studio. Here's me using it with my Switch 2 during my trip to the Milwaukee Regional Pokemon Championships. I was blown away with how simple it was to use, and I saved an absurd amount of bag space. I'm seriously so excited to never have to pack my capture card and multiple HDMI cables ever again. Best of all, they're both currently on sale on US Amazon until October 30th. Please check out both the Core Go and Elite Go using my links in the description. It really helps me out. Thank you again to AVerMedia for sponsoring this video. Now back to shinies. Okay, before I get into the Battle Frontier, I need to explain how the Generation 4 games determine if a Pokemon is shiny or not. Here's the super brief version. Each Pokemon has an original trainer's ID, secret ID, and a hidden PID, also known as a personality value. The game performs a calculation on these 3 values, generating a number between 0 and 65535. If this number is less than 8, so anything 0 through 7, the Pokemon is shiny. This is where the 1 in 8,192 odds come from. It's just 8 over 65536 simplified. Okay, now that the numbers are out of the way, let's talk shinies. Let's start with the Battle Tower. This post-game challenge facility involves bringing in a team of your own Pokemon and challenging trainer after trainer to climb the tower. In Diamond and Pearl, the Battle Tower unintentionally boasts the highest shiny odds in the series. When the game generates your opponents and their teams, it intentionally tries to prevent shiny Pokemon from appearing. Upon creating an opponent Pokemon, the game randomly generates its PID. If this PID doesn't meet certain criteria, a new PID is generated then checked. This repeats until a valid PID is found. The first criteria is whether or not the PID matches the Pokemon's nature. Here's the full chart, but basically you can divide a PID by 25, then take the remainder and use that to determine its nature. In the Battle Frontier, things like Pokemon movesets, nature, and held items are all predefined in the data. The game is just generating a random PID that lines up with that data. The second criteria is, unsurprisingly, whether or not a Pokemon would be shiny. So the intent here is to make sure that the nature matches the data and that the Pokemon isn't shiny. The problem is a very minute programming error that I'm sure many programmers watching have experienced. Instead of the game generating a new PID if the nature doesn't match or if the Pokemon is shiny, it generates a new PID every time it doesn't match the given nature and the Pokemon is shiny. This means that the game is actually generating the wrong natures instead of the one it's supposed to, and that you can actually get shiny encounters in the tower. All you need to do is roll a PID that matches the nature that the Pokemon is supposed to have and corresponds to a shiny. How rare could that be? Well, there's 25 natures, and remember, base shiny odds are 1 in 8,192, so the odds of a Diamond and Pearl Battle Tower shiny are 1 in 204,800. Yes, it's that bad. Shiny hunters, I beg you, please do not ever do this hunt under any circumstances. You can't even catch it. Please don't. Regardless, this programming mistake was corrected and switched to an ore check in Platinum, HeartGold, and SoulSilver, so no Battle Tower shinies in those games. Reddit user LincolnLM posted a video using RNG manipulation to force one of these 1 in 204k shinies. Mo also shared a clip with me that shows it working in the multi-battle mode as well. Here, Mira's Latios is RNG manipped to be a 1 in 204k shiny. If you wanted to RNG manipulate this yourself, I put the grip seeds for a few different shiny partners in the description. Mo also managed to find a couple reports of a Battle Tower shiny that seem legit. Reddit user RowletBoy posted this 5 years ago, before people learned about it being 25 times higher than regular shiny odds. There's also this post by Switcheroo Titar that shows a Battle Tower shiny appearing in multi-mode with HGSS. This is a legit 1 in 204k shiny if the Diamond or Pearl game is the party leader, and shows that you can technically get it to appear in other Gen 4 games. So it is definitely possible. Seriously, please don't hunt this. Next, let's go over a simpler shiny error. The Battle Arcade and Battle Castle are similar to the tower in that you bring a team of your own Pokemon and battle a bunch of trainers, but they each have their own special gimmick. More importantly, these facilities also feature the chance for your opponent to have shiny Pokemon. Despite Game Freak having the functionality to prevent shinies from appearing in these facilities as we just discussed, they just didn't use it in the arcade and castle. As a result, your opponent's Pokemon have the normal 1 in 8,192 chance to be shiny. This is super easy to show with an action replay. Here, I used a code that makes wild Pokemon shiny. This code doesn't work on regular trainers or most facilities, but in these facilities, it does make literally all of my opponent's Pokemon shiny. The last facility that can have shiny Pokemon, the Battle Factory, is by far the weirdest one. For those unfamiliar, the factory involves using rental Pokemon exclusively. Every round, you draft 3 random Pokemon from a pool of 6. After every battle, you can swap one of your Pokemon for one of your opponent's Pokemon. Achieving the gold print here is very hard because the game is mean. And I throw a lot, but that's besides the point. Shiny Pokemon can appear in the factory as well, but what's special is that you can actually use these shiny Pokemon. Not only can you actually use them, you can transform your non-shiny Pokemon into a shiny Pokemon. In order to shiny hunt in the factory, you have to use the rest option after winning a battle. This saves your game and kicks you out to the title screen. Upon reloading, the game saves again and you are thrust back into your current Battle Factory streak. At this point, there is a chance that one of your rental Pokemon is now suddenly a shiny. It can even impact Pokemon you haven't rented yet, meaning that you can battle a regular Hypno, rest, and then rent it as a shiny Hypno. When I saw this initially, I assumed that surely the Pokemon is being regenerated upon loading your save, and more specifically, its PID is getting re-rolled, leading to a Pokemon suddenly becoming shiny. But upon checking, all of my Pokemon PIDs remain the same. We just talked about how the Battle Tower prevents shinies from appearing, and unlike the arcade and castle, the factory uses this same logic. So what's the problem? Well, fun fact, I spent like 6 hours investigating this, found the answer, then learned that it's been solved previously, multiple times even, in both the English and Japanese Pokemon communities. It's just not documented super well and not really searchable. When you reload the game, it does indeed regenerate your current rented Pokemon, but it doesn't roll a new PID. Game Freak was smart enough to recognize this potential flaw. When you rest and the game saves your rental Pokemon data, it also saves their previously generated PID. Upon reloading, the game rebuilds your team from this data and just reuses that PID. The problem is that the Pokemon's original trainer ID and secret ID are not stored. They are generated from scratch when you reload. The don't generate a shiny check I talked about earlier only happens when the game is generating a new PID. So the Pokemon has these new IDs, but already has a PID. Therefore, no extra shiny check. That gives these restful Pokemon the normal 1 in 8,192 chance to be shiny. But remember, these are rented Pokemon. You can only rest after winning a battle, and each round is only 7 battles. On top of that, you can't just soft reset infinitely here, since the game saves as soon as you reload. This is done to prevent people from losing a battle then just reloading their save. As a result, you get at most 6 chances to make one of your Pokemon shiny before saying goodbye to it forever. Oh, and this also means that if you rest again, the Pokemon's IDs get re-rolled and it will likely lose its shiny status. At the very least, you do have the chance to use and enjoy the shiny, unlike the other facilities. Let's summarize what we've learned here today. Diamond and Pearl's Battle Tower has a 1 in 204,800 chance for any of your opponent's Pokemon to be shiny. This was fixed for the other Generation 4 games. The Battle Arcade and Battle Castle have regular shiny odds for your opponent's Pokemon, and the Battle Factory's rental Pokemon have a 1 in 8,192 chance to become shiny, but only after utilizing the rest function. At this point, some of you might be thinking, "Grr, Game Freak is so incompetent. How is it possible for there to be multiple different shiny issues when they tried to account for this? I'm gonna write 40 tweets about how dumb they are." Relax. I have a computer science degree that I don't really use anymore, so let me try to explain. Here's a possible scenario that can shed some light on how these things can happen. Imagine one developer realizes they should have a generic, Battle Frontier-oriented Pokemon generator that can handle the usual stuff, account for Battle Frontier-specific data, and also prevent shinies from appearing. They make this, and it gets used in the tower and the hall. Some other people work on the arcade and castle, and either finished it before this tool existed, or just didn't know about it. It all works fine, but they didn't know about the shiny check, resulting in unintended shinies. Some other people work on the factory, they see that there's a Frontier-specific tool for generating Pokemon, they use it, and it works great. But the person who made the tool in the first place didn't account for how rental Pokemon would work with resting, and neither did the implementers, leading to the bizarre temporary shinies. This is an oversimplification, but I wanted to highlight a few ways these things can happen. I obviously do not know the inner workings of mid-2000s Game Freak, but these sorts of things are very common in development. They usually get caught and ironed out by standard workflows, but it's super easy to see how these ultimately unimportant issues fell through the cracks. At the end of the day, the actually critical aspects of these facilities worked, and that's probably all they cared about. Even if Game Freak did learn about these issues after the release of Platinum, they likely didn't think it was worth the developer effort to fix for HCSS or international releases. Alright, now that you are armed with this cursed knowledge, are these shiny hunts you would ever consider attempting? And more importantly, do you vaguely remember seeing a Battle Tower shiny in Diamond and Pearl as a kid? Let me know in the comments. Big thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. If you would also like to support my research and archiving efforts, you can check me out at patreon.com/etchy. Special shoutouts to Frorio, Mithra Was Taken, Verota, Fuzzy Hugs, Pastel Punk, Birder, PSF, and Askenhawk for your support. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.